Live.
Gavel it, read that.
Yeah, live. Okay.
Yeah, gavel it and then read it. Make it a part of the official record.
Okay. Okay. Maybe.
Did I touch anything?
Just me, just mine doesn't.
I didn't do anything this time. I swear.
Hey, Randy, call it to order.
Well, I still might have to share.
moment.
Yeah, I mean, before I read this,
Yes, we want to make that part of the official record.
I'm very good.
1 second. You gotta get Jennifer a microphone. She's not loud enough to.
No, she is
Go
loud
without.
enough, believe me.
For shame, Rick. Can you pull the other one towards you? Yeah, I figured that's what we'll probably end up doing. 'Cause We'll play with that one.
Yeah, because we use one the additional.
Is that live?
Testing, check 1, 2. Yeah. That's what I would be as a guitar tech. Wow. Okay, it's good. All right, next one.
I'll do my best to get.
All right. Rick, go ahead and call the meeting.
Calling the Utility Board public meeting of June 16th, 2020 to order. In accordance with the governor's executive order relating to COVID-19, in-person attendance at tonight's Utility Board meeting will be limited. We have arranged a live stream of the meeting so those interested can do it from home. The meeting is slated to start at 6:30 p.m. You can view the meeting via our website at cedarlakein.org/view-town-meeting/. Then click on View Broadcast under the live broadcast. You must join the meeting through the link to participate during public comment. You can raise your hand electronically to participate during public comment. Due to the unique nature of this meeting, the town of Cedar Lake will accept public comment submitted electronically. If you have a question or comment about an item on the agenda, please email that question or comment to jill.murr@cedarlakein.org. Mrs. Murr will ensure that all submissions are shared with the utility board of the town and that the submission will also be entered into the meeting. Please keep your comments civil and constructive to the policy issues of the agenda. Now, we could also stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If we could have the roll call, please, Jennifer.
Robert Carnahan.
Here,
John Foreman is absent. Julie Rivera. Here. Ralph Miller.
Present.
Randy Niemeyer.
Present.
Colleen Scheeben. Present. Richard Sharp.
Here.
I am present. Jill Murr. Present. David Austin.
Present. Under new business, approval of the minutes from May 19, 2020. Can we have a motion to accept and waive the reading of those minutes?
So moved.
Motion by Ralph,
I'll second.
second by Julie. Jennifer, if you could, please.
Robert Carnahan.
yes,
Julie Rivera.
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben.
Yes.
Ralph Miller.
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes. Motion carries 6-0. Next, number 2, written report, the fund report by clerk treasurer Jennifer.
Previously, I had emailed you all the updated cash fund reports and expenditure reports. Earlier today, I also sent you, I pulled out the water and wastewater on one report, and per Randy from the last meeting, I also gave you numbers for the storm accounts via email. And just now, kind of going along with what we did at last month's meeting, I gave you a side-by-side view at our billing and our revenue from May of 2019 compared to May of 2020. And I worked the numbers, and when you look at the totals overall compared to May of last year, we actually had, for May of 2020, our collection rate was 98%, and May of 2019, I have our collection rate as 96%. So
Who would have thought any of that?
Yeah.
I mean,
That's great.
None of it makes any
and
sense.
that's without applying penalties. We're still not applying penalties.
Sure.
So that's about 10, 11,000, each month. So we're staying pretty steady. We're fortunate that our citizens are keeping on top of
Absolutely.
their bills.
Well, we have a lot of blue collar folks in this town that are working what they deem to be essential jobs, although I think every job in an economy is essential.
That last report you sent out, Jennifer, I didn't have a chance to print and look at that.
It's in your email, Bob, and it's just comparing the numbers showing overall billing and receipting.
Okay, I'll look at that.
Yeah, that's what she just went over, so.
Yeah.
Our collection rate's staying pretty good. I mean, if anybody else has any other questions, but I mean,
The one report on the storm board, that will have to be talked about at the town council, because once before I thought we should discuss storm board at this meeting, and I was told no, that is a separate board from this.
storm's always included in the overall reports that I send you all. I simply pulled out the funds separately per, at the last utility board meeting, Randy had asked for some numbers, so.
I was being a pain. And so one of the balances that I was most interested in is the Storm Capital Improvement Fund. And it shows the ending balance as of 6/16 is $753,581.58. So that's what we were
Correct.
talking about in utilizing for some of these smaller projects and being able to carry enough of a balance to invest in some of the neighborhood projects when we're able to tackle things like Noble Oaks, to be able to have some of that capital improvement dollars left. But it's good to know where we're at on the pathway right now.
And I was amazed to see that the total funds is $1,111,031.85.
Yeah, it's a pretty good number, and it definitely behooves us to move forward on some of these projects that we've got on the list, so we can alleviate some of these old flooding issues. And I believe Tim will give us a report on some of the work they've been doing.
Okay, Jennifer. And you're okay with,
Rick,
you're
thank
pretty
you.
much okay with the rest of the cash balances now, right? You're pretty.
I mean, yeah, we can discuss that during town council if you want,
That's
but
fine. No, that's fine.
I mean, we
That's
can,
fine, yeah. Thank you. Consultant and staff reports. Engineer Nice, we have a consultant appointment for engineering services. And I believe you have all received that, and that is from Nice Engineering. This will be an annual renewal, is that correct? Neil? No, I would love.
I mind, but go ahead.
Do you have majority?
No,
We had
only one voice.
previously submitted for appointment at the June 2019 meeting
Right.
for the, following the RFP request that you guys had last year that we went through, and we could do it any way you want. It's essentially, this is a, what we call 50 series numbers, which are routine services. So they can either go a 1-year period if you like. If you like, we can do it through the end of the year and we could resubmit it. So it's on a recurring schedule that,
With everything else?
yeah, that might make more sense, and we'd be perfectly fine with that.
You okay with
So
that?
whatever-
absolutely.
I have some questions, Neil.
Yes.
We did, at the last meeting, we did water replacement design engineering, which was $76,500. Then we did the 2020 water utility preliminary engineering report proposal, which was $32,250. And I looked through this and I I didn't see any kind of not to exceed amount. So it's just based on the chart of different consultants that we use.
Yeah, Bob, you're absolutely correct. Those two proposals you had mentioned are defined scope of work not to exceed with a T&M, that if we end up being under the budget, the town benefits to that. This is work for routine services that, maybe be as needed on call, not scope of work projects that are very defined in terms of either the PER or Utopia water main replacement, which are projects we're currently working on. But these are, general projects that Tim says, hey, I need you to look at something. This just deals with those kind of projects, which are routine services.
It's all time and
So that's why
Correct.
you can give us a not to exceed amount.
Correct, because it could be 1 hour a month, it could be 15 hours a week, and then nothing for 6 months. So you're absolutely right.
It's kind of
Bob.
like your service here, like coming to these meetings, there's a certain amount of billing for that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And if I'm not needed here, and I talk to Jill
Yeah.
or Rick or somebody like that, said, no, we don't need you here. Nothing's coming up till next month. We'll see you then. You're absolutely right, Randy.
very good. Okay, Bob?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Nice Engineering through the end of the calendar year. So this can be reconsidered at the first part of 2021
Very good.
and make that a part of an annual renewal or solicitation of services if we decide we need to put out an RFP.
Second.
We have a motion by Randy, seconded by Ralph. Jennifer, if you could roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Julie Rivera. Yes. Randy Niemeyer,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben. Yes. Ralph Miller.
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And ultimately, this is, at will. So you're absolutely right, Randy. If during the year you want to look at something else, that'd be absolutely fine too. And it's all a matter of on call as needed.
Very good.
Thank you.
If you could go with the rest of your report, thank you.
Sure. West Side Sanitary Sewer Interceptor update. We are working with Dave's office to finalize those easement agreements. They've been working hard to prepare those, and once those are completed, we can go out to the bidding process and coordinate with Lake County on the agreements that we've already submitted to them that County Highway Engineer Dwayne Alverson is working on with us with Commissioner Tippy. For items 3 and 4, the East Side Sanitary Sewer Inspection and the SSES update, now that Public Works is back on a normal work schedule, my understanding is they're continuing the video process of those sanitary sewers. They're going to provide those to us, upload them to the FTP site, and once we review those, we will move forward with recommendations for not only local but regional projects on those interceptors. For item 5, the Utopia subdivision water main replacement design engineering, we began survey this week. It took us a little longer to get the utility locates done than we like, but it's a fairly large subdivision, and we had met last Thursday with staff, with Tony, Ryan, Kyle, Brandon, Jill, and Tim, and they're working and coordinating with us for the utility locates and doing some exploratory excavation with the hydrovac machine to get us locations of those water mains.
How long do we have to leave the flags in our yards in Utopia?
As long as reasonably possible.
Okay.
I wish. We expect to be, stricken from the record, please. We expect to be done surveying in about 2 to 3 weeks. But again, there are challenges because there's a lot of backyards over there. There's fences, there's sheds, and pools, and then those kind of things are definitely a challenge. But I know there's been contact out to the residents from town administrator's office of what we're doing and what the expectations are. But we plan on being completed with our work within the next 3 weeks. And then we may have to come back for some spots picking up here and there for things that don't make sense for the plans that we do have. And it's fairly sketchy in terms of what plans we were able to acquire. Public Works had some, Town Hall had some, we had some. We were able to find some from the old files, but that's a subdivision from the early 70s, into the late 70s. And
My home was built in
unfortunately,
1968, so it started
Oh.
in the 60s,
even further back.
right at the town's inception.
So we've been working through the subdivision plats and engineering plans that we've been able to acquire, but it's definitely been challenging, but we're moving in the right direction on that.
Good.
Item 6, the water utility PER. We are on and ahead of schedule. We have, we intend on being completed towards the end of June to the first week in July, and we will definitely be on schedule to submit by July 17th to the IURC, to the Indiana Finance Authority for the SRF, consistent with what the requests were from Indianapolis for the OUCC as part of our IURC rate case file. There is one item that we need to consider regarding the historical architectural review. And I think Howard had sent that over to Jill earlier this week. This is a requirement of the Indiana Finance Authority SRF requirements for the PER application, that you essentially have to show there's going to be no net negative impacts to historical architectural landmarks within the community that you're applying for. So fortunately, since we had done back in 2010 the PER for the 129th Avenue 16-inch water main, we had a starting point that we sent to this consultant, Kurt Garner, that we had requested. We tried to go back to the original one, Pioneer Consulting, that did it in 2010, but unfortunately that gentleman is no longer doing consulting. He's working for the DNR, and obviously that'd be a conflict of interest. But we were able to provide Garner the report from 2010, and we believe that that's going to save you in the neighborhood of about $500, because he needs to take that and update it rather than recreate everything.
Good, super. So that's the, he's got an estimated fee for $1,500, is that
That's correct.
not to exceed 2,000?
That's correct. We spoke with him about what he needs. He estimates it will be significantly less than 2,000,
Okay,
but he wanted to have that as a not to exceed in case there's any review comments back from SRF that he needs to update. But we estimate that it'll be $1,500 to that specialized consultant.
right. Yeah.
Randy, you want to take an opportunity to make a record here about the additional costs of the town, that's in the jurisdiction of the IURC. Facing now, in the last 30 days, the requirement that we engage these, not your fault. I'm not on you,
I understand.
for $35,000 to do the PER, that our consultants in Indianapolis had to redo their testing. Our attorneys had to reorganize that testimony, filing consistent with requests of the OUCC, and now you get another, little appetite.
Right, and it just kind of segues from what Bob was talking about with your engineering work that you had to do that is really because of the IURC and the extra lawyer fees. I mean, by the time we're done with this, we're going to probably be 300 grand extra into this than what we would have been without this, quote, utility regulatory commission that's supposed to look out for the good of consumers. And it costs consumers hundreds of thousands of dollars more for bureaucracy.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And considering your entire jurisdiction is covered by, the 7 council people that represent the area that you serve with the water.
And we
system.
have to be voted on every 4 years.
Yes,
And if we do things unsatisfactorily, then other people will take our place. But there's not that same accountability in Indianapolis when it comes to these sorts of projects. So,
are you using logic and common sense? Can I write that down?
no, sir.
Okay.
There's none of that belongs in government.
Yeah, and David's right. It's been a very arduous process going through this that down the road in the future, you could consider alternatives to dealing with this onerous process
Excuse me, the meetings are already drafted.
in the future.
Council said go. We'll be ready next day.
Understood.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you.
So does Neil need some,
Does it, we need to approve this? Is that correct, Jill?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
this agreement for services?
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agreement for services for Kurt West Garner.
So moved.
Motion by Ralph,
Second,
second by Randy.
And that's not to exceed $2,000?
Correct.
yes, sir,
Yeah,
with an estimated amount of 1,500, Bob.
All right.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Julie Rivera. Yes. Randy Niemeyer,
Yes,
Colleen Scheeben. Yes. Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes, motion carries 6-0.
We will
Thank you, Neil.
wait for Jill to process that, but I'll let Kurt know. And he's estimating he can have that done in the next 5 to 8 days.
Oh, okay. Great,
Because he's going to be
great.
in the area working on another project. So
Okay.
we'll get that. And I believe we're going to be able to use the geotechnical review from 2010. And that'll be a savings right there.
Okay, super, that's great.
Thank you so much. Any
Thank
other
you, sir.
questions?
Yeah, any questions for Neil?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the Director of Operations report. Mr. Kubiak, please. if you would.
listen to that voice, like
Yeah.
Pavarotti.
About that.
It's almost back to
I
normal.
was thinking it was Zoom that was causing all that.
It's getting crazy. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Like Neil said, they're hammering again. They've just about made it to 142nd where the sanitary sewer takes a detour off through the woods, through the wilderness, where we have to actually hire an off-road company to come out. And the boys started clearing out that line of trees and brush and overgrowth through there so they can get in there and get that part completed. Unfortunately, everything we do turns into a challenge. That's for some reason, but it is what it is. So, moving forward with that, as you mentioned about the stormwater, Randy, we've got a couple of the Havenwood stormwater projects taken care of and started. So Mr. Lamika has been on there for a while. We got his water diverted from. Go ahead, Bob.
Tim, you need to report that to the town council.
Okay. I'll note that down. Okay, next we have the lift station 5. You guys have a thing in
We
your
do have
packet.
a proposal from.
Proposal
Is that
from
right?
Xylem.
Yeah.
That is the equipment for lift station 5, which is over here at the Lighthouse Restaurant.
Okay,
I'm wanting to order that. That is the pumps, the wet well, the entire lift station, controls, backup generator, the entire deal. So that's all of our, that meets all of our specifications, and that's actually our town standards for lift stations. So there's nobody else that actually distributes and sells the Xylem equipment in the area. You know, so
And that will be for $169,930.78 for the total price.
I've got 162,930.78, which includes freight. Is that
that's what
right?
I got.
162,930.78, Bob. That includes the freight.
Okay.
So we'll still be lacking hiring somebody to actually install it.
Okay, this is for all the parts. or
So this is
whatever.
all the equipment.
Okay.
And where does this put us on the list of needed replacements of this lift station equipment?
Well, this is we still have a couple more, but I think we have 2 more that are going to be ready to replace, but they're still getting along. So this is our worst one by far.
How many have we replaced so far? Do you have that number?
Well, we've gotten 4 of them redone.
4?
Well, 5 actually, because we did lift station, I guess 6. We did 1 and 3, our 2 big ones. They're not completely redone, but we did do bypass.
Wasn't this the one where it looked like Tony pulled out a swamp monster out of the sewer?
No, that was in the intercept.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's in the yeah,
That's
okay.
fine.
Yes.
But lift station 5 is.
I remember
an old
that
metal
picture.
cannon that's right here in the creek, so it's a rough customer. It's rusted out. Everything is completely wore out, so there's no rebuilding it. So this is similar to what we did at lift station 9 down there on South Parish. We purchased the equipment, then we hired somebody to install it, and then we do the electrical and the panel hookup in-house now, so we have that capability. If we need a new electric service, we have to hire that. But,
Okay.
so we're kind of, I mean, we're saving a considerable amount of money. If we go through hiring somebody to purchase the equipment, it's 10 to 20% upcharge just on buying, just on them supplying the same material. That meets our standard.
And that will have a little small device in there and eliminate a lot of that equipment, right?
Correct.
Like you showed us in those pictures.
Yep, it has the whole state of the art, everything, control panel, drives, start, and it also has a backup third pump generator. So when power goes out, this is, instead of a standby generator, it's actually a third pump. So if you ever have any pump problems, you're automatically ready to rock and roll. When you start that pump up, that pump will actually pump as much as those 2 electric pumps that are in there all the time. So you're never, the whole idea is you're never without. You don't have to bring a generator. You don't have to worry about one pump being down and being overloaded or anything. So.
And where is lift station 5 actually located?
Lift station 5 is right here in our backyard, Bob, right by the lighthouse at 140th and Binion down there.
By the dam?
Correct.
Yeah. That caught on fire a number of years ago.
And that's still the same stuff in there. There's still
Yeah.
charcoal on the box, so we'd like to go ahead and get that ordered. It takes about 3 months to get it here, and then in the meantime, we'll get some prices on installation. It's gonna be, I mean, it costs us like $30,000 to install the one on Parish. This is a similar station. It's like 3 feet deeper, but we're gonna have the challenges of the water. So hopefully this law, if we can get this on order now, we'll be able to get it right here at the end of summer when it's the right, absolute perfect time to get it in. So that's the game plan.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Tim.
Thank
I
you.
entertain a motion to approve the proposal from Xylem for the lift station 5 part.
So moved.
Thank you, Randy. Second, please.
I'll second.
It's 162, 930, 78.
162,
Got it.
930, 78, yeah.
Okay.
Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Who made the motion and second?
I made the motion. Julie seconded it, Bob.
All right. I'm gonna put that down here. And I vote yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer,
Yes.
Colleen Scheven,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes. Motion carries 6-0.
All right, thank you, guys. Any other questions?
Thank you. Any other questions for Tim? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Town administrator, Bill?
Only that I am currently working and having communications with the town manager from Lowell to schedule the JMOB meeting. That would tie into JMOB report later. They are still currently closed, so I am in communications to try and get that scheduled as well as the joint council meeting.
Very good. Yeah, we need that.
I
Thank you.
anticipate bringing some dates back to you.
Okay, yeah. Very good. Thank you. Town attorney, Mr. Austin, please.
The water rate petition is in full throttle discovery right now. Essentially, the schedule of events, deadlines, et cetera, September 9th is the projected preliminary hearing date. See if we have to go or not, whether there's stipulation to an agreement. Don't know that. We're still in discovery. So that's for that.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Barnes Thornburg engagement agreement proposal. proposal in this regard, in regard to our waterworks revenue bond. For 2020. Want to elaborate on that just a bit? If you could, please?
Sure, Rick. We project the issuance of bonds, approximately $1 million for the water tower and similar essential infrastructure in our water utility. In fact, we've been talking about it here for a couple of years. This is the formality of the engagement of bond council, which will be necessary for municipal finance, capital municipal finance. Barnes from the bond council for forever, and it was discussion paper up to what he's been actually working on with us and working with for months.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
What are we paying Barnes and Thornburg?
Yeah, Bob.
It's time and material again, Bob.
It's what?
Time and material, or basically just time.
Oh, time and material? Okay.
And they've done, God, dozens of these bond closings for us over the years.
They have this particular one. I'm not certain exactly.
Is it Phil Facenda still
Yeah, Phil
at the lead of that?
Phil
Okay.
And he'll be the face of the board. We've been working for a couple of years since the Crystal Oaks project to the present. So, and there've been no billings, no payments. That'll happen for sure. For the fine.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Dave. Do we have a motion to approve the Barnes and Thornburg proposal?
So moved.
Julie? Made a motion.
I'll second.
Ralph seconds. Jennifer, could have roll call, please?
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Julia Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer,
Yes,
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes,
Richard Sharp.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. GMOB report, it was just Gil's already reported on that. Anything to add? You don't have anything to add, Gil. Okay, thank you. Any public comment? Comment? No public comment. This meeting is now adjourned. Next meeting, Tuesday, July 21st, 2020 at 6:30. And we'll roll right into the town council meeting. Thank you, everybody.
is everybody ready?
Yep.
Meeting is called to order. This is a town council public meeting for June 16th, 2020. I'll start with a disclaimer. In accordance with the governor's executive order relating to COVID-19, in-person attendance of tonight's council meeting will be limited. We have arranged a live stream of the meeting, so those interested can view it from home. The meeting is slated to start at 7 p.m. You can view the meeting via our website at cedarlakein.org/view-town-meetings/ then click on View Broadcast. Under the live broadcast, you must join the meeting through the link to participate during public comment. You can raise your hand electronically to participate during public comment. Due to the unique nature of this meeting, the town of Cedar Lake will accept public comment submitted electronically. If you have a question or comment about an item on the agenda, please email that question or comment to jill.murr@cedarlakein.org. Mrs. Murr will ensure that all submissions are shared with the elected officials of the town and that the submission will also be entered into the minutes of the meeting. Please keep your comments civil and constructive to the policy and issues on the agenda. We'll start with, we already had the pledge at the onset of the utility meeting. We'll start with a moment of silence. It's been a while since we've all met. I'd like everyone to keep in their prayers, really everybody in our country right now. There's a lot of unrest, and it'd be good if everyone prays for some peace and tranquility and some unity, so we can all pick up and move forward.
I
So
would
a
also,
moment of silence. Go
I'd
ahead.
also like to mention former Lake County Sheriff's Officer Ryan Askew that was killed this morning at Community Hospital. Please keep his family, his wife and his foster children in your prayers.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Here.
John Foreman is absent, Ralph Miller,
Present.
Colleen Scheeben,
Present.
Richard Sharp,
Here.
Julie Rivera,
Here.
Randy Niemeyer,
Present.
present Jill Mur,
Present.
David Austin.
Quorum is established. We start with public comment on agenda items. Is there any public comment on agenda items? Any public comment on agenda items? Third call for public comment on agenda items. Public comment is closed. At the end of the meeting, we have an open public comment. Consent agenda tonight is the minutes of the May 19, 2020 meeting. Claims, all town funds, $254,601.32. Wastewater operating, $91,149. Water utility, $112,608.70. Stormwater, $25,978.51. And payroll for May 28, 2020 and June 1, 2020 and June 11, 2020 of $458,062.87. We have the manual journal entries for May 1st through the 31st, 2020, and tag day requests. Cache Creek Rescue, June 27th is a new request, and Cedar Lake Lions Club, August 8th, change from June 13th. Is there a motion to accept and waive the reading of the minutes and accept the consent agenda as listed?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Sharp,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Rivera. Are there questions or discussion?
Yes, I have one. In one of your reports, Jennifer, you have the 50th anniversary and we're still carrying $103. Could that be transferred into another account?
I would have to confirm with SBOA, but anything like that would most likely need to be transferred into the general fund.
Okay.
Any kind of remainder funds for anything, normally SBOA tells you to put it in your general.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. We move on to ordinances and resolutions. If any of you would like to look at the ordinances that we consider, they've been posted online ahead of this meeting. Ordinance number 1353 is the Board of Safety Establishment. Ms. Rivera, read by its title only. This is the second reading.
Ordinance number 1353. An ordinance establishing a board of safety for the town of Cedar Lake, Lake County, Indiana, repealing all ordinances and town code provisions or portions thereof in conflict herewith and all matters related thereto.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. Any comments?
This is a basic, but thorough establishment ordinance for converting the oversight of the emergency service function to the Board of Safety, Combined Board of Safety, police, fire, and governance of that.
And if this is passed tonight, the advertising will start immediately to be closed on June 30th for council consideration at the July 7th council meeting for appointment of the 2 vacant seats. The 3 police commissioners will roll over onto that board, and there'll be 2 additional citizen appointments. Okay, you've heard the second reading of ordinance 1353. Is there a motion to adopt the ordinance?
I'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Motion by Ms. Rivera,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Scheeben. Are there questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
sorry, Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Please start that advertisement tomorrow, Jill, and get us a list of names. Item 2 is ordinance 1354, weeds, noxious growth, rank vegetation, other environmental nuisance regulations amendment. First reading was May 19, 2020. Ms. Rivera, by its title only, please, for second reading.
Ordinance number 1354, an ordinance amending Cedar Lake Town Code Title 9, Chapter 93, entitled Nuisances, and specifically sections 93.20 through 93.28, entitled Weeds and Environmental Nuisance Regulations, to comply with current Indiana state law provisions regarding the same, repealing all ordinances and town code sections or parts thereof in conflict herewith and all matters related thereto.
Thank you. That's the second reading of ordinance 1354. Is there a motion by the council for adoption?
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Motion by Ms. Sheben,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Miller. Are there questions or discussion? Discussion by me is, I'll state for the record, in the past, we've had issues with consistency of enforcement of this item, that we can have one yard that receives a warning or a citation with weeds and a yard right next to it doesn't. So I just want to make sure that we have the consistency of enforcement going forward of this, that everybody's treated fairly and equally under the law. Any other questions or discussion? Roll call vote.
Robert Carnahan,
No.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheven,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Neiman.
No. Motion carries 4-2. Ordinance is adopted. BZA, item 1 is owner Cedar Lake Commercial / petitioner Richard Daly, doing business as Auto Exchange, 12841 Wicker Avenue, special use variance. The Board of Zoning Appeals certifies an unfavorable recommendation to the town council for the requested special use variance to allow petitioner Richard Daly to operate Auto Exchange, a used auto dealer, a B3 use in a B2 zoning district based on the findings of fact. Number 1, petitioner did not attend meeting. Number 2, no correspondence. Number 3, unapproved use of property. Bob, were you at the meeting or did you attend?
Yes, and there was no response from them, so that's why they're sending an unfavorable recommendation. I will make a motion to accept their unapproved recommendation.
We have
There's-
a petitioner.
The petitioner has not been called. A motion's been made by a council member. I'll consider a second to the motion.
Second.
There's a second to the motion by Mr. Sharp. Are there questions or discussion on the motion? I'll give you a moment at the podium.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tom Vellender. This is Rich Daly. I'm hoping you could, at the very least, postpone your vote, because we do not have everything that we talked to the zoning department. We don't have everything done yet, so we're still in the process of finishing all the things they want. We need to go back to the building department. I guess they need to do an inspection. So other than that, we did comply with some of the things they wanted, as far as we did the parking lot. We painted the fence and repaired it. And so there are a few more other things that have to be done. So
why was the petitioner not present at the BZA meeting?
that was really my fault. I was sick.
You were sick,
Yes.
but Mr. Daly is the petitioner?
You know something, I did not know until he told me that we were supposed to be at that meeting.
Okay, so the other thing, no correspondence, what does that mean? Jill?
There was no correspondence from one meeting to this last meeting.
At the first meeting they came to, it was deferred, their petition was deferred due to some item in the parking lot. I was supposed to meet them on site to inspect the property, see what was going on, so they were supposed to contact the building department within that month time before the next meeting to evaluate, get a feel for what was going on. They were supposed to contact me whatsoever.
And it was their responsibility to make that contact and schedule it?
Yes.
Okay. And item 3 was unapproved use of property. What's the meaning of that?
There's about 20 cars parked in the back of the building.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So that explains all of that. Why weren't some of these things prepared for the BZA?
Well, some of the things we did get done, but some of the things we're just plain working on still. Also, the owner of the property, I guess, had to, I don't know what he had to do, resubmit the application for zoning or what he did. So we were kind of waiting on him.
Can you give some context to that, Jill?
I have no,
The owner of the property, Schilling, Big Schilling did not sign the.
So Schilling didn't sign the application?
And we talked to him, yes, Rich talked to him yesterday. and He
talked
said
to
he
them
did.
last week and they said they would take care of it. And I talked to them like.
Why are there 20 cars there right now?
Well, when I rent the place, I asked them if I could put stuff there and they said it would not be a problem to get a license there or anything. Like, it was just, I get a lot of snow when I first get there. And when I came over here to apply for the license and stuff, and they were supposed to, they didn't tell me what was the rock zone in the first place. They said it was a car lot before and I should have no problem. And that's where everything went wrong after that.
Okay. We have a motion and second on the table. The motion was made by Mr. Carnahan and the second was by Rick to uphold the unfavorable recommendation by the Board of Zoning Appeals. We'll take any other questions or discussion on the motion.
If we pass this motion, does that put them back to square one, that they have to go back to the Plan Commission and the
BZA.
BZA?
Yeah, so it starts the application process. What's the window of time they have to wait to do a new application?
1 year.
1 year? Yeah, so that would push them to the 1 year mark from the original application, right? Okay. So there's a motion second on the floor right now for consideration. Any other questions or discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
No.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes, motion carries 5-1. The unfavorable recommendation of the BZA has been upheld. So I'm sorry, gentlemen, but no luck tonight. So you're welcome to start the process over when that timeline elapses.
Okay.
Thank you. Item 2, owner Howard Skorka, petitioners David and Amy Larson, doing business as Vito's, 9720 West 133rd Avenue, use variance. The Board of Zoning Appeals certifies a favorable recommendation to the Town Council for the requested use variance to allow the petitioners David and Amy Larson 6 picnic tables for outdoor seating at Vito's LLC.
And there again, Frank's Barbecue had picnic tables and they want to put the 6 picnic tables to the northeast of their building. And I will make a motion for a favorable recommendation for the town council.
You'll make a motion for approval?
Yes.
Thanks, Bob.
I'll second.
And there's a second by Ms. Scheeben. Questions or discussion? Discussion. I've tasted the Italian ice there. It's fantastic. They're doing an excellent job. And it's great to have a business like that people are really rallying around. So congratulations to you. And what an original idea. I mean, who would have thought that something as simple as Italian ice would take off like that? So great work. Any other questions or discussion? Roll call.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes, motion carries 6-0 and the cantaloupe is the best. Thank you.
Heard it yet. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jill sits right at the end there. You can give those to her. And for anybody listening or watching online, give Vito's a try. Pretty awesome place. Yep.
Yes, it is.
Plan item number 1 is letter of credit, Summer Winds Commercial. Mr. Austin?
I've reviewed and checked off on the form and content of the letter of credit. The bank is the lending institution. And this is, I request public meeting.
This is the commercial plaza being developed between Elmwood and the Strachan Van Til Plaza. Is there a motion by the council?
This covers 110% of the credit, which is $238,278.60, and I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Bob. Is there a second?
Mr. President, I'm sorry, that's 283,000. He transposed it.
Okay, let the
Oh,
record reflect
okay.
it's 283, 278.60.
Got that.
There's a motion by Mr. Carnahan. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Miller. Other questions or discussion? Question? Has Mr. Lambert or his representatives reached out yet to you, Dave, or anyone else about the incentive package that was offered by the RDC and partially by the council?
Not yet, but it's coming.
Okay.
And that was for 75,000?
It was for 270,000 total, but it was a combination of funds, Bob. A portion of it was for stormwater and drainage, which is infrastructure that's needed in the area anyways. Public benefit infrastructure that would be installed. It was all underground stuff.
All right, and Dave said they haven't contacted him?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Roll call.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. New business, item 1 is fireworks usage and special permit application. Ms. Murr?
Council, we received this application. Oh, excuse me. For the Cedar Lake American Legion Post 261 to have a fireworks display on July 18th, beginning at 9 p.m. With an estimated ending time of 10 p.m. This ties in with their summer Veterans of Valor event.
Okay, Chief, Chief Wilkening, are all things in order for this permit?
I'm not in favor of it at all.
You're never in favor of fireworks, but
They want to use amateurs to blow it off. They have no actual plan. Sorry, that's what people pulled out.
understood. Dave, could you hand Todd the microphone so Bob can hear him? There you.
There's a lot of variables to this.
It's on. It's on.
There's a lot of variables to it that haven't been covered yet. I'm not a big fan of doing ground displays, especially when there's a potential for a fire fallout from it. There's an issue with who's actually going to blow the fireworks off. It's not a professional organization. And one more thing, I can't remember what it was. Jill, I think I
The
said-
layout.
Oh, yeah, the layout wasn't favorable, and if it's just a little windy, then we're gonna have some problems. It's right next to a residential area, just not, I don't like fireworks other than when Summerfest does it on the lake, because it's safe. And we can't guarantee that it's gonna be safe, but we really don't even know what type of fireworks they wanna pull off. They wanna use store-bought fireworks from the corner store, and the corner store supposedly is gonna be putting on the display, but we don't know who those people are. So who's putting on the display? So I consulted the Indiana State Fire Marshal on it. In fact, he was in my office one day, and he says it's up to the local jurisdiction to make a decision on it. So I'm not in favor of it. It's gonna.
So is there, Todd,
Have to put personnel there.
is there any guidance by the state on utilization of professional personnel, certain layouts of anything, or is this just all up to locals all the time?
Well, no, there is guidelines from the state that does say that if you're putting on a public display, it needs to be done professionally, but it's a private event, it's different, so there's some gray area there. So what they do is they leave it up to the local authorities to make sure that it's favorable in our opinion, to do so. This is a council call. I'm not in favor of it. We would have to staff some people there. We would need a fire truck and I want an ambulance on site and a police officer there as well to be able to approve this. The council is, you're more than welcome to approve it, but we do need to do it safely, and we do need to reserve the right to cancel it if the weather conditions aren't proper. I'm afraid by doing this, we're going to set a precedence, and we're going to have a lot of these, and we're going to end up having. We already have another one that wants to do it for a wedding at the lighthouse, and I already told her there's no possibility we could do that because she wanted us to blow them off. She didn't have anybody. So it's gonna, with the lack of fireworks showing, unfortunately, we're not having at least one big one in Cedar Lake this year because of the COVID. Everybody else is wanting to do it now too, a little bit more smaller scale. And
I fear that on July 4th, there's going to be explosions in this town of biblical proportions because of a no fireworks show this year.
The only fireworks show I really would like to see is the summer guns. They do it right. It's out on the lake. They have professional people do it. It's always managed properly. And, we support that as a town event. These are, and I know this is a very good cause, I do, but there's a logistics issue and a manpower issue. If the council wants to cover that, I'll be glad to do it.
Okay, thank you, Chief, for your input. Is there a motion for consideration by the council on this fireworks usage and special permit application? In favor of or against?
Could we give them time to maybe come up with who's gonna blow them off and maybe get their stuff a little more straightened out?
Speak up for
I'm sorry,
the
could we
mic.
just maybe give them time to the next meeting to maybe pull it together a little better, maybe get somebody professional to help blow them off and lay it out better?
The next meeting's July 7th.
That wouldn't give them a lot of time, but a little bit.
Is there a timeline for these sorts of applications for consideration, or is it all local jurisdiction?
No, they don't have to get a permit from the state.
Gotcha, okay.
It's not,
Since it's not a public.
it's not public. It's
Gotcha.
not high power stuff.
Well, if that's your preference, Colleen, you could make a motion to defer this item to the July 7th meeting, pending them working on some of the layout and logistics as it relates to who's going to be firing them off and the management of the event.
Okay, well, I'd like to make the motion to defer it.
Okay.
Just to give them time to see if they could make Chief Todd a little happier and make it a little safer.
I would just say,
It's a logistical nightmare over there. I mean, not only is it a residential area, it's a whole area.
Mhm.
I mean, like I said, if there's a little wind, it's gonna blow into the woods in every direction, whether it's a railroad tracks.
We've done the same fireworks.
Not only that, we'll have parking issues, we'll have people on Washington and Lakeshore Drive is gonna have issues. We're gonna have the general public, which is welcome there because obviously they have a Brett Soper coming.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be open to the public, so then you're talking
Once
mass
the word
amounts
gets
of
out, it's
people.
gonna be a fireworks show.
And it's just gonna be very, very difficult to control that area. I mean, we have some really nice homes. I mean,
Bob, if you can't hear Chief Bill, he's talking about some of the logistical issues.
I can hear him.
Okay,
I have a big voice, so.
good.
It's just, it's a really tough area. I mean, it's a great cause, and I think the Chief and I both agree. It's an absolute great cause, and we would be behind them on 90% of whatever they need to be done. But a fireworks display is gonna be really difficult. It's gonna be taxing on both police and fire. We're gonna have to have people there as well as for traffic alone. It's just gonna be tough because we're not having them. That's our big issue. We're not having one with the town. We've had some other requests to have fireworks displays, but nobody's having them. So when the community finds out we're having one, then all the other communities start showing
Okay,
up.
so I have a question just because Julie had brought up a point to me that they're being bought from the corner store. So in reality, I could go buy the same ones and blow them off
Absolutely. They're
anywhere.
1.5
So
grams
they're
of
not,
plastic.
they're not the ones that are blown off out in
They're
the lake.
not what we get on the lake. No.
Right,
No,
Right.
1.5
they're pretty good
grams.
size.
Yeah.
they are,
And
but
they-
they're not
Correct.
And
professional on the lake or a town show.
Yeah, they're there, but they'll have to be lit off by hand, just like you would do at home or
Right.
something like that.
and they're advertising as a public display, so.
Okay, well, maybe they should change their advertising.
There's a motion to defer by Ms. Sheben. Is there a second to the motion to defer?
I'll second.
Second to motion deferred by Ms. Rivera. Are there questions or discussion on the motion? Roll call vote.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
No.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes, motion carries 5-1 to defer to the next meeting. And I suppose if they can't answer some of those questions, then
Then
it is what it is. Okay, thank you. Item 2 is memorandum of understanding for fire protection territory. I'll give a report on this. This is a very generic memorandum. Dave has reviewed it, has sent some recommended revisions, but in its entirety, it's very generic. The purpose of this memorandum is so the group of 7 entities, which includes Hanover Township, St. John, the town of Cedar Lake, Center Township, the city of Crown Point, the town of Winfield, and the township of Winfield, could enter into a partnership. And our first order of business would be to put together an initial scope of work for a financial advisor RFP, so we could hire an advisor for the initial scope of work, which would include gathering all the data and asset information from each one of the taxing entities as it relates to current budget commitments, revenue streams, and assets. And so that way we have the entire information on the table for everybody to start with, so we can start to consider how those assets could be reallocated as they sit, and then what, if any, additional assets might be needed as we formulate a budget and operations and all of those things that make a fire territory. So it's a pretty large undertaking. It would serve over 100,000 people, this fire territory, if it were to pass. So it's a pretty significant intergovernmental cooperative effort. And this memorandum, like I said, is very generic. Dave, if you can offer your comments for the record on things that you thought need a little bit more tuning in on this memorandum.
I've got some clarity on the funding between the units to be discussed at least. We have an equal term right now and disparity between the number of citizens served by each unit for purposes of funding this. And I could phrase Randy, so exploration.
Yeah, exploration was the phrase that you had a little question on.
Like Columbus. I just, and we didn't want to be on one of the 3 ships sailing around. I thought it required an agreement to investigate and study. And so that's why.
So for the record, Dave's recommendation is to change the exploration to investigate and study. And on the cost side, and I agree with this, I think any motion that's made, if it's favorable, needs to be contingent upon the correct allocation of costs based upon population of the entities. And we can come up with a percentage skew that way that's fair to everyone. Hanover Township shouldn't pay the same as Crown Point, because everybody's got a little different skin in the game. So I think that would be a good contingency to add to that could easily be updated on the back end of this. And I'll give a report while we're talking to this too, is that we had a conference call and the trustee of Hanover Township, Kevin Toth, is here too. He participated as well. We've had a couple of calls now, Zoom meetings, where we're getting these first steps outlined. This memorandum would allow us, like I said, to take that first step to put together an RFP and a scope of work with a financial advisor to start to put all of our puzzle pieces on the table so we can start to put them back together and figure out how to make this thing work. So with that, I'll consider a motion on the memorandum of understanding with the contingency of a calculation of cost share that is equitable for the participating members.
So moved.
So motion by Mr. Sharp,
I'll second.
motion second by Ms. Scheeben. Questions or discussion?
Would we want, is Kevin there? And would he want to put any input into this before we vote on it?
So Kevin and his board are going to have to consider this as well, Bob.
Okay.
Each taxing entity as part of it will be able to consider it. So I'm sure that Kevin and his board will debate this and talk about it and either approve it or not approve it. at their discretion. Kevin, you can come forward if you'd like.
Good evening. I didn't plan on talking on this, but I guess maybe the question you were asking about, I do have some revisions that I think, and one of them was dividing up the cost share of it. The other thing I thought was, like you said, it's pretty broad language in there as far as the territory and what we're gonna look at and all that. But should there be like an out clause in there somewhere or something too, that if one of the entities at some point in this thing says, listen, I'm done. Without, but once you sign that, are we bound to being
No.
held into paying for that?
For that portion.
Yeah.
You're agreeing that you're retaining consultant with the other 16.
Actually, it doesn't say that explicitly in there.
That's what it means.
But-
That's how I interpret it also.
But there was like five things listed in there that we're going through this, and one of them was actually, it starts getting into actually the makeup of the territory and what area it would cover and all that. Well, there could be a point where even before we got to number 5, where somebody might say, my board's have it, we're not gonna do this. So how would we out on that?
And that little departure provision can be added if clarity is needed on that.
But I don't think in an MOU, there's anything other than at will.
That's all it is. That's
Yeah.
fine. And you start with that.
So at any time, if your legislative body decides, hey, we don't want to be a part of it, they make a simple vote, you're out of the MOU, you're out of the group, it's over. Because until we get in that statutory process, which would start January 1, this stuff is very loose and it's kind of a handshake agreement.
I understand that, but we just wanted some clarity, and I did talk it over with our attorney also, and he recommended that we have some kind of out language in there too, that so nobody's held to paying for the entirety of that MOU.
Kevin, did he
So-
provide any sample language?
Not yet, no, we're working on it, we're discussing, I'm gonna have a board meeting in the next week or so, a special meeting, so we can talk about it, but it's just something that he recommended.
So tonight we added a contingency to our motion. So
Yeah.
maybe that comes with yours as well.
Yeah.
And then when we have our next conference call, July 9th, I'm sure that there'll probably be several others that input like that we could actually put together the final draft MOU, but at least it allows us to start that conversation.
Yeah, just some,
in a
some protection
partnership.
for any of
Understood.
the entities that are in there, so, because I mean, we don't know what it's gonna cost, I mean, that thing could get pretty.
Yeah, nobody knows yet.
The whole end of it could be pretty expensive.
That's why it's best if we can just get everything on the table.
You're going to solicit proposals from professionals to do the financials, right? That's
Yeah.
what it says. You're gonna solicit.
And
We have a
from-
single, we have a single scope of work first, though. We're not going with the full scope to start. We're going with the single scope.
Cost,
Yeah.
because you'll solicit the proposal and engage the professional for X number of dollars.
Yeah.
So you won't go into something blind or be blind because of that. And all 7 units will have to agree or not.
And the goal of,
No, won't participate.
the goal of our July 9th call that we'll have is to come up with that initial scope
we
and
kinda
to
figured
walk
that-
away with that.
We were kind of figuring that first scope was gonna be just that initial part of it, but the MOU is very broad as far as I read it, and it kind of opens up a lot
Yeah,
of
the
boxes.
MOU is
so-
kind of a 15,000 foot view. Our conversations have been at about 30,000 feet. I understand your concerns about that you don't want to be tied into paying for something if the board decides somewhere along the line, they don't want to be a part of it. So I get that. And that's a
I
worthy
think maybe stepping
contingency.
it up, stepping the MOU to saying where it actually spells it out that first of all, we're gonna do the initial assets and of all the communities but it kind of says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that MOU, and I'm kind of thinking maybe it should just say number 1 first, and then maybe there's some out or some way of before you go to the part 2, all the entities would agree.
What I see in here is an MOU that just basically generally and very generically covers this partnership in it. But the out clause part of it, I can see as a legitimate contingency if that's
Yeah,
what
that
your
was
group
our
wants to
concern,
add.
so
Yeah.
We're gonna work on it and we'll present something.
I know we're pretty committed to this process, so we're gonna see it through like we did last time and work hard at it and see if we can make something happen.
No problem.
All right, thanks, Kevin.
Maybe this dialogue is going on in 7 minutes.
Yeah.
I've heard a couple of them already.
Yeah.
Everybody has positive, objective commentary. That's what it's gonna take to get down the path, anything. So let's hear it. Let's hear it. Nobody owns this.
Right, and Dave even admitted, Dave Uran said, listen, some lawyers will look at this a little different. Some people interpret things different. and that's okay. The bottom line is if we can get kind of the core of this thing, so we can at least start the process, take that first step. And that's my goal with it, is to just take that first step so we can put all of our cards on the table, do all the discovery work, and see if we've got something that's viable to work with. Okay, there's a motion and second on the table for approval of the memorandum with contingency. Is there any other questions or discussion? Roll call.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben.
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. We need a signed copy of this memorandum by the council members and sent to the city of Crown Point.
Do we have a Word version that's make changes? I don't know if you received that, Jill, or.
A Word version? I do have a Word version.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
So what you might do is just outline in parentheses or whatever in red, the contingency.
I'll put it in margin.
That's fine. But that it was approved and signed off on by the council with those comments. Yeah, getting 7 units to all agree on the same language it's a difficult process. Item 3 is Rose Garden Estates signage request. Ms. Murr?
Council, our building department received a request from Rose Garden Estates, which Lennar, wanting to put various signage around the community to direct traffic to their model homes. They have identified on a map where they would put some of those, while I understand some of them aren't within our control. Asking for this on the weekend. I don't know if Tim has any additional comments on that. We're supposed to be putting them up and taking them down every weekend.
Okay. Is there a motion by the council on the Rose Garden Estates signage request? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
There's a motion by Ms. Rivera. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Mr. Sharp. Are there questions or discussion on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Robert Carnahan,
No.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randall Niemeyer.
Yes, motion carries 5-1. Item 4 is a temporary request for 13111 Lakeshore Drive. Hoping I didn't add too many ones. Candy, would you care to come up and speak with us about this request?
Well, to encourage our social distancing, we're still not open because we are a very small bar. And to encourage social distancing, we get maybe 10 people. We want to fence in some of our grassy area out by the bar, put up a few picnic tables, maybe a cornhole game or two, and encourage people to be outside and social distance to make up some of our loss over the last 3 months. That's basically it.
Okay.
Use the orange fencing to just fence it in so I could keep kids out.
So just a temporary thing for this summer to kind of get past
Right.
this period of time?
While while we got decent weather, close it down at sunset. They could go home, or if the bar's empty, they can go in there.
Okay. Chief?
Only thing I would suggest is that if we do allow it, that we double fence it like we do with the beer garden, simply so that there's no alcohol being reached across the fence. If that's possible, we do a 6-foot gap with the beer garden to ensure that nobody can reach.
So you social distance your fence.
Correct.
That way the fence doesn't infect the other fence, right?
The only entrance it's not through the outside.
No, it would have to be on the outside. Here, can I show you? Because where we want to go with it. Otherwise, yeah, way over there. I know you said way over.
Well, it's not, no, I mean, this is, but it's not, that's a pretty big gap, so you're gonna have this fence thing so that nobody can come into here.
What I do is I would put. Because I'm thinking only through the sunset during the day. I'm not gonna put any lights out there. I don't want people out there all night long.
Dave, you have a comment?
I put this in the category of the keep visual rule under our common code, especially. Requests made, will then be documented by staff, either our ability to enforce. Candy will come in with the conditions or, parameters for doing this. And, enforcement.
Okay. What does that mean?
He did it.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. Okay, that's the recommendation by the attorney and Candy's request. Seems pretty simple.
Make a motion to approve the request.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Rivera, second by Ms. Sheehan. Questions or discussion? Roll call.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Neiman.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. I hope you guys can sustain this, get back on your feet and get rolling again.
Hope to. I was hoping to come with you with a whole edition, but no, not this year.
So we'll look forward to that.
No live music.
No live music.
No live music out there.
And it's only through this summer.
This summer is all we're planning on.
I
Just a few picnic tables, if it gets crowded, get out, go outside.
Sounds
There's a bucket
reasonable.
of beer, go. That's about it.
Take the bucket of beer with you too.
Yeah.
Don't forget that. Thanks, Candy.
All right, thanks a lot.
Item 5 is Community Crossing 2020-01 agreement. Item A is AES Incorporated proposal. Item B is Chicago Testing Laboratory Incorporated. Ms. Murr.
Council, in working with Don Oliphant from Christopher Burke on our Hot in Place asphalt project, community crossing matching grant project, we need to do some pavement testing for the project. The AES proposal was for your typical pavement core. It's in the amount of $4,350 for 10 cores, which are distributed throughout the project. And the CTL proposal is a unique one linked to this hot in place process. The 10 cores from AES will be sent to them to determine the proper rejuvenating quantity to use during the recycling process. And that amount is $2,800. We actually had the opportunity, and AES had an opening in their schedule. They were able to get out there and do those cores today instead of it taking about 3 weeks to get them out there. So that process has already begun. This would be a ratification of that proposal I had discussed with you. And now they will be sent over to the other company to continue the process so we can move that project forward.
Thank you. You've heard the list and the recommendation from the town administrator for the AES proposal and the Chicago Testing Laboratory Inc. proposal. Is there a motion to approve the proposals as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Miller,
Second.
second by Mr. Sharp. Are there questions or discussion? Roll call.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Neiman.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Item 6 is Kozlowski Light Pole Relocation Request 10915 through 21 West 133rd Avenue. Ms. Murr.
Council, Mr. Kozlowski is actually online with us. He has requested, sorry, my packet fell apart in my hand. He had requested the opportunity to discuss the movement of the light pole located in front of their building. Per his request, they had originally asked this light pole not be put in front of the building when the street project was in progress. They have applied for and been approved for funding for their facade through our facade grant program through the RDC. They have met with their architect and contractors. It was discussed and determined a course of action to move the light pole from the front of the building to either side so as not to block the view of the building and detract from the new facade. He asked that to take this issue up with the council at the meeting and would love to split the cost of the move with the town. And he is available if you had any questions.
Is there any questions by the council for Mr. Kozlowski? He is online on Zoom.
Do we know what the cost is?
At this point in time, I don't know what the cost is. If the cost is modest, I would tell the council I'll pay for the whole move. I just don't know what that cost could be.
Thank you. So the proposal.
Jill, do you know, because you're looking at trying to get some street lights moved in town?
The only one we haven't identified any streetlights yet to relocate. This would involve having to do some changes with underground electric and concrete work and restoration. So no, I have no idea on the cost on this one.
Mr. Austin?
For this, come back in 3 weeks with good numbers and good understanding of what the responsibilities and costs will cost.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to defer this matter. I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Rivera for deferral. And Pete, this is just for some discovery on what the actual cost and logistics of it will be, so we have a better idea how to proceed with your request.
Yeah, I understand, and that's perfectly all right with me.
And seconded by Ms. Sheben. Questions or discussion?
Mr.
I've got-
President,
I've got one question.
Go ahead,
Are
Ralph.
Are we talking about the decorative light?
Yes.
yes.
Tim, is that something we could do with in-house? No.
Hold on a second. Tim, he's getting you the mic.
My question is just where exactly will we be relocating it to?
The relocation could be either east or west of the building. There's common areas on both sides that it could go. I have no preference, whatever the town prefers.
Mr. President, also, we would need to make sure any movement of that light would meet our lighting ordinance requirements for that thoroughfare.
So it sounds like we have a few questions to answer before July 7th. There's motion and second to defer. Any other questions or discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben.
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Thanks, Pete. We'll have this on the agenda July 7th. Appreciate you joining us.
I thank you, council, for listening to me.
Thank you.
Item 7 is attorney engagement ratification. Mr. Austin? Okay. There's an attorney engagement ratification. That's for Weezer and Wiley, correct? Randy Wiley is attorney. Is there a motion by the council to ratify that engagement?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mr. Sharp. Questions or discussion?
Yes, I don't understand what this is about. And I got no paperwork with it.
It's a personnel matter, Bob, so it can't be
Oh, okay.
discussed in public.
All right.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion on the motion? Roll call?
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Ralph Miller,
Yes.
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Richard Sharp.
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Before we go on to reports, I need to jump back to item 2, the MOU for fire protection territory. If you look at the signature page, it lists the town council president as the signatory. So we would need the motion to concur with allowing the town council president to sign on behalf of the council. The motion was made by Rick. Would you concur with that? The second was by Colleen concurrence?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just need to clarify the record. Town council reports. Bob?
Our census is about 73%, so we're still not getting there where we want to be. And I keep putting it out there, and Sarah keeps putting it out there, and hopefully, and we've got till October 31st to continue filling them out.
Where are other communities around us, Bob? Do you know some statistics?
I don't have them, but from what I was told, everybody's ahead of us, which blows my mind. St. John is probably the best in the state.
Wow.
They're 80 plus.
Well, Bob, you're going to have to get out of the quarantine and put it in high gear now.
Oh, I'm doing Facebook and everything else.
Well, I'm sure that people will come around. Hopefully everybody realizes that before the end of the year that what's the deadline on that now? Is it the end of the year?
No, October 31st.
Okay, October
it was
31st.
supposed to be July, and they extended it due to the coronavirus.
Well, hopefully we can get a good count.
And then it's supposed to go to the president of the United States by December 31st, but now they're thinking they're going to wait and send it to him in April of 2021, which will delay all this census counts. And then we've got to start to redistrict all the wards. That's another process that has to take place after we get the numbers.
Yep, that'll be fun. Thanks, Bob. Any other council reports? I have a couple. Gentleman by the name of James Hicks called from the area located behind the Midway Gardens area. He lives back there. He has been complaining about the noise and congregation of young people in that area around Dairy Bell and Sandbar. He says a lot of these people are revving their engines, playing loud music, shooting off fireworks. I advised him that the police have been patrolling it. He said that they're running down Lakeshore Drive at up to 50 miles an hour in his estimation. There's a lot of people hanging out in that area. Bill, can you talk about some of your enforcement efforts in the area?
I talked to Bill about that today, and Chief Fisher, go ahead and explain what you're doing.
We had an undercover officer there, an unmarked car there today, running traffic. And no, we had one violation. The speed limit is 25 in there. We're watching that closely because there's a lot of foot traffic for Dairy Bell and all that stuff. We're watching that. Officers are making passes through through there. But it's a congregating place. Kids are there. They're drinking, eating Dairy Bell and enjoying themselves. Their music's really loud. My guys will tell them to turn it down, but
In the evening, are you able to place a car there and watch some of the speeds as they're leaving?
if the calls are not pending, you can't have to.
Okay. That might be good, just,
We're gonna put the traffic sign up. Too,
okay.
The speed sign, try to see what they can do.
Just a concerned citizen.
Sure. We were there today, like I said. I had an unmarked car there, just sitting there, running traffic, using our LiDAR, which is a laser radar.
And there's a white Ford Focus that belongs to my daughter. Make sure you keep special eye on that one.
You should be out there on Weenie Wednesdays. You should be out there on Weenie Wednesdays. It's
Hey, I just want her to know that she's protected, Tim. That's all.
We let her know the dance.
Oh, God, that'd be funny.
Yeah. So, I mean, we are out there.
Yeah, and I haven't heard a lot of negativity come from that area. It seems like people are actually patronizing the businesses.
Oh, wow.
So
That's great.
it's glad.
I had more complaints about how many people are there than people patronizing. Because they're not-
I'm glad they're not just loitering, but they're actually buying stuff. I had an RDC report from last night. It ties into the work that's being planned to be done on Moore Street, the scarification that was talked about. So Councilman Foreman and several others, and it's been mentioned a lot over the years about the addition of a pedestrian/biking lane to that thoroughfare, as eventually creating the opportunity to have that all the way around the lake. And according to the advice of our attorney, we could possibly invest some park impact fee funds in a recreation lane like that, because it is recreation based. And the RDC was favorable in a recommendation to do that. Obviously, the council would have to make the appropriation of those funds out of the park impact fee fund. I believe there's a little over $1 million sitting in that fund right now. So Don Oliphant was directed by the RDC to get together some preliminary engineering costs that would not delay the current timeline of the project as it's scoped. This would just be an additional scope added to it and paid 100% by the local. So that's something that we would need to consider at a future meeting on allocation of those funds if it's deemed affordable and feasible for to add that lane to that stretch of Moore Street from 145th to 133rd.
And another thing, he suggested that it go on the east side of the road due to the fact that there's less streets that go on the east side than go on the west side.
Yeah, there's less driveways and there's less steep hills on the east side as compared to the west. So that was his recommendation. But that will eventually lead into hopefully the entire thoroughfare of 145th to Lowerman and around the parish, and then back to Lakeshore Drive is eventually becoming a place where pedestrians and people riding bicycles can have a lane to themselves and be able to enjoy the lake like people have always wanted to. Council Affairs report. We had a Council Affairs Committee meeting. When was that?
June 4th.
June 4th. Thank you, Ray. We had talked earlier about some of the unpredictable nature of our current budget situation based upon tax collections and COVID-19 uncertainties. We actually had a pretty favorable report from our financial advisors that based on current trends, we look like we can hold fast for this year. Nobody knows how next year will look yet. Depends on how the employment numbers recover. We won't know the impact of the income tax for a little while yet, which is why we won't know the impact on next year for a while. But the current revenue sources look to be sustainable. And Jen, do you have any comments to add to that?
Like I reported earlier in the utility board meeting, we're seeing a slight drop in our collections when it comes to utility billings, the user fees, but we're not seeing anything crazy. I just received the monthly distribution for MVH and LRS, and compared to May of 2019, it's only about a 10% drop in what we received May 2020. May 2019 utility billing revenues were at a 96% collection rate. May 2020, we were at a 98% collection rate. So, you know, we're seeing slight drops, but really we've been kind of lucky so far. We won't know more until the end of this month. The big question is how that June settlement looks.
Okay, thank you. Ecosystem Restoration Committee.
The committee had a meeting. We discussed some possible options. John can actually bring back a little bit more. Unfortunately, circumstances, he's not here this evening to bring back a little more. We are working with Christopher Burke Engineering on a couple other options. So we anticipate having a report for you at your next meeting.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee. Rick, Ralph, and I, or no, Julie, Ralph and I, I'm sorry. Anyone you want to start with a report from that?
We met with Chief Wilkening and just discussed some of the needs of the fire department and how to hopefully meet those needs in the future.
And you'll see under the town attorney report that we're going to discuss one of those things that's been ongoing in ordinance 1352. So again, the conversation was mainly focused on fire for this particular public safety committee meeting, because it's been pretty well advertised that our turnover rate has been pretty alarmingly high in our fire department, and we are exploring ways to close that gap as it relates to competitive pay and be able to put together a sustainable force leading into the fire territory.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Bob.
Chief Fisher, when was the last time we purchased police vehicles? And also the ones that you have, what is the mileage on them? And are you doing a lot of repairs on those vehicles?
We are starting to. We have 3 vehicles that are pushing 100,000 miles on them right now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We have 3 vehicles that are pushing, actually 4 vehicles pushing 100,000 miles right now, which is what we were looking at to replace this year. Last year we purchased 3 vehicles, and we got those in March of last year. I think it was right, March of last year, to be on that billing cycle. This year, when I approached Jen and Jill before to bring it to the council, they had asked to push it to towards the middle to the end of the year, so that it was on that billing cycle to maintain a cash flow, which I was completely understanding of. So we were anticipating to start presenting that to you now, so that we could get the vehicles purchased, as we had 4 vehicles on the docket this year to replace. I haven't presented anything because we've only talked about the ambulance the last few times. So I knew that that was something that was important for the fire service to work towards. But we do have 4 vehicles that we need to replace.
Bill, is there any way that you can compile some financial numbers on the maintenance costs of those high mileage vehicles, so we actually have something to look at? It's not something that we really ever see. So, I mean, people always talk about nickel and dime, and I always tell them nickel and dimes don't kill you. It's the $100 bills that do. So a brand new car is what, 30,000? And then by the time you outfit it, probably looking at closer
The
to
quotes that I have right now, actually, because Thomas Dodge won the bid for pickup trucks in the state, I can get a brand new Dodge Ram for $26,000. So that's what we need to replace is our 4-wheel drive trucks that we maintain a fleet of due to the snow that we receive from time to time. I know we haven't had it for a couple of years, but when we started purchasing them was because we were stuck. We had to borrow vehicles from
there was that one real bad winter where we had.
So
almost
now we
100
have the
inches of
fleet of
snow.
4-wheel drive that we maintain so that we don't have that problem. When we have a big snowfall, those vehicles are left here at the station and are used pretty much 24/7. So,
You know, just kind of a sidebar, the thing that always kind of perplexed me, and I think it was Chief Smith that first ushered in those pickup trucks. And the big thing was the tow package. And I asked Chief Smith then, I said, I have never seen a Cedar Lake police vehicle towing anyone.
we don't tow people, but we've towed the billboard sign that goes along the roadway to warn traffic, things of that nature. We haven't used it in a couple of years. We do have the ability to tow the trailer that the VIP have. And we also have a UTV that we own, that the town owns, that we got for free through Homeland Security, that has a large trailer on it that we can tow it at any point to any destination to go off road for search and rescue.
I
So
believe he made a comment also about the tow packages was the better suspension. and
Correct.
The better vehicle itself.
Correct.
You know,
Correct. There's a reason
with all
for it.
the
I mean,
wear
it
and
lasts
tear that's
longer. I
being
mean,
put on the car.
yeah.
Could you get us some
I
of
have
those?
a 2013 trucks that have 100,000 miles on them, and they're still running pretty decent. And a 2014 that has 100,000 miles on it. So
Could you get us some of those maintenance numbers over the last couple
I
of
will
years?
attempt to do that. Yes,
Yep,
sir.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. I believe so. Yeah. It gets the bid. It's the state bid.
But it was
price
always
to
funny
keep it.
because Jerry was always talking about this tow package. I'm like, are we running a police department or a towing service?
Yep, the other question I have, Mr. President, while we're on this subject is, and I know that I was sick, but this is the second public safety meeting that we've had that I wasn't invited to whatsoever. And I know that we're really looking to help the fire site. I understand that, but at what point are we gonna both be involved in the conversation so that we can both have input, whether it's police and fire?
If these are ad hoc meetings, so if you feel there's something that you need to discuss with the committee, talk to the town administrator and we'll schedule it.
Well, I was under the impression it was a committee meeting that we were trying to have together to continue the.
Not necessarily, it's just,
open
it's
conversation.
just dealing with whatever is coming up in at certain times. As that way we're more fluid in the conversations and things aren't coming to us all at once.
Okay.
So I apologize if that wasn't communicated clearly to you.
I was, honestly, I had taken it from when I was promoted to chief that you and I had a conversation. We wanted to start having these open meetings where we can have good conversation, get everything out on the table, and that's what I thought these meetings were set for. But the last two, I wasn't even invited to them, so that's why I was asking about it.
The last one was a carryover from the previous one when we met with the chief and we were so uncertain on some of our budget stuff for this year. So that was just kind of to finish up that one. And so if there's some things on your mind that you think need to be discussed, talk to Joe and we'll get a meeting scheduled and we'll meet with you.
Sounds good.
And then we'll have a report at that subsequent council meeting on that meeting.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep, no problem. Street committee?
The street committee, we are coordinating a meeting. Don will be finishing up and getting some of those items to update the next capital round of projects, as well as some of our other local projects. So that will be scheduled and upcoming.
Thanks.
Bill, excuse me, would it be
Go ahead.
beneficial if some of the citizens of particular areas that we're going to talk about, that they would be there, they would like to be there for gift certificate? Would that be, could we do that or not do it?
You could do whatever you
You
choose
can
in a
invite
committee
whoever you want
meeting.
to those meetings.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
We'll coordinate that as we
Yes,
schedule it.
we will. Thank
Always,
you.
always remember this, you know, in those committee meetings, they're not a quorum, okay?
Yeah.
You're an elected official, you can invite whoever you want to them. You could have 100 people here if you want, if that's the kind of meeting you want. Huh?
It makes it easier to schedule it that way.
Yes, it does.
You can have 100 people here after July 4th.
Okay.
You have to remember that.
Yeah.
Well, there's no spread coming from any of the protests or gatherings. Stormwater. Now we can turn over to Mr. Kubiak.
But I would, Randy and I talked and Randy indicated that we don't really know what's going on with the different committees, like the BZA and the plan and the storm board. So he asked me to talk to see about getting the storm board minutes to each of the council members. And then I also told the rest of them to copy you on Plan Commission, BZA, and all that other things. So you're going to be getting minutes from all the different commissions.
And thank you, Bob, for leading that, because I think it's important that there's some things that sometimes we don't feel like we're in the loop on. And by having those minutes and being updated on it, we'll know what's kind of moving forward in the town or what's not moving forward. So we're not taking redundant action here. So Tim, you want to talk about some of the stormwater projects?
Yeah, I guess we've got a couple stormwater projects, namely in Havenwood, that we've been getting finished up from last year. And unfortunately, the weather just now is being cooperative with moving forward with stormwater projects, because every place that we had a project was completely swamp, mud, impossible to get in there without completely making a mess. So we got Mr. Lamika's water diverted from coming out of his driveway onto Raven Way. He's still wondering if the town will mud jack his driveway. The driveway still absolutely has no problem other than water was boiling under it. It's not broken, sunken, or anything, but that was his question. But the water is diverted from boiling out under the
I
driveway.
believe he would have to file a claim in order.
And I
for
think
that
he
to take
did that
place.
previous,
Okay.
so I don't know. I mean, that was where we kind of left it. We finished up we had like 3 residents on Marsh Landing Parkway that their basement windows were filling up with water from all the water coming down the hill. we got that all done and restored and back to functioning. They got no water in their window wells during that last giant rain, so that was a pretty big accomplishment. So again, we got, the DeFrancisco project, I think we have that tackled. He needs a little bit of grass planted, and that should be addressed now. So we're getting a couple done here and there. I actually last week promoted a guy, Eric Boersma, to the stormwater crew leader. So we have somebody cleaning out catch basins. 2 guys are basically dedicated to stormwater, cleaning out, doing all of the things that we get complaints on, and trying to address, maintain and address just stormwater drainage system. So with the limited amount of resources that we have, we're kind of spreading everybody thin, but it's hard if I don't do that, it's impossible to keep track of everything. So it's a little slower paced on the projects, but we are making efforts to keep them moving in the right direction.
Have you been in contact with any of the stormwater vendors to see what kind of capacity that they might have to tackle some of these smaller projects?
Everybody's, we can get them tackled. It's just, we need some help with getting it scheduled and getting the game plan. Don's got plans together. Everything's got temporary easements. There's still a lot of coordination efforts to get out there and get it done. And my days are pretty full with inspecting and permits and so on and so forth. So everybody says, oh, why don't you just call somebody? But calling somebody is that's a project, and it has to be overseen and make sure everything's getting done properly. So
is that something that can be delegated to someone like the town administrator or something? That once you have a scope of a project, you don't have to micromanage it.
Possibly, yes. Like I said, we're trying to move forward on some of these projects, but again, every one of them that we have is temporary easements. There's a lot of things to get done ahead of time, and like I said, also that we are just now able to start doing them reasonably without completely destroying people's property, trying to get in and get stuff done.
So some of the other ones that were on the list was over Colfax, the dust property. What's been worked on there?
That's Don. Don was working on getting an easement, and and Jill, I believe, was working on that with him.
Jill, could you offer a report on that?
Yes, that one was discussed at the May 26th town council stormwater board meeting. They did give approval to have Don put that design together, and then we can send it out to the contractor. So there are a couple little components to that, working on and getting that easement. So Don's working on that documentation right now. Other items that were discussed were Sherman Street and the Shades area. There is a low-lying area. We're looking at that as a little bit more globally. Again, a new house put in, and now just you're used to the water going to that low spot, and it's not going to that low spot anymore. Monastery Woods North is one of them that's on our list. 137th and Lowerman. This was discussed a while back with the council as well. That will tie into the Noble Oaks project. There has also been some discussion with another longtime resident in that area, and Don was able to receive some additional information just this past week. So that will tie into Birch Street and adding that into one of the larger construction projects, but looking at something we could do right now to, whether it's some ditch maintenance or adding something in. But
Yeah, because right now that water just all kind of gathers in that corner, and it's got nowhere to drain. It doesn't go under the road. There's no crossover, and it all wants to run to the lake, but it all pools there. So even if you cleaned out culverts, it's not going to do anything because it's got no place to run. So that was and it's been like that for a long time. But as more homes have been built in Winding Creek and Winding Creek 2, that's exacerbated it too. And we got a sidewalk there that never used to be there. So that sidewalk has also created a little more runoff in that area. And I visited with the homeowner at the corner there, Josh Straminski. And, he's pretty frustrated with it because his yard is always a mud hole. And just recently it dried out enough for him to mow it properly.
Yeah,
as Jill indicated, Don Oliphant is working on that. and does have a plan for that.
Okay,
Those
thanks,
were-
Bob.
Those were coming in at projects well over $100,000 plus, without any easements or anything. And that was determined it really needed to be part of a larger street improvement project in that area. Also,
So what report can I give to the residents there?
I can get an additional report from Don on where he is on that one,
Okay.
but that's gonna tie into the street committee
Okay.
meetings.
Because I think all people want to see is that, somebody's listening, paying attention, and that there's something in the works. That we're not just kicking the can.
128th incline, there's the low spot heading out of the roundabout. That was one of the items. We've been working with the property owners there, and one of the items, actually, it seemed to help having the curbing in there, but we still do have a pooling in the area, but waiting till the Lakeshore Drive incline roundabout was completed and seeing what results came from that and tackling that game plan. So that property owner, we will be having some additional communications now that that project's wrapping up.
The neighborhood where Mr. Veman lives.
That neighborhood, I haven't gotten any further than having Don take a look at that one.
Has there been any report on the analysis?
Not yet.
Yeah, Don did take a look at it and he said that he didn't feel that there was anything from that house that was built 15 years ago in the rear yard. There's no negative impact on Mr. Veman's property, but it does need, obviously, to get that water around his house to the front drain.
Is there any impact being created by the little subdivision that was built between there and Hawkinson's farm? Probably in that 15-year ago range. What the heck's that
That's-
subdivision called again?
The Parish Fields?
Parish Fields, yeah.
I don't believe so, because the Parish Fields is to the south. There was some, that area is, the town put in a giant stormwater line down Parish to the ravine there at Ledgestone about 5 years ago, which relieved a lot of that neighborhood. They actually have a place for the water to go now. If he can get it to his front yard, it can drain. So, but Don didn't notice anything crazy other than some grading issues. You know what I mean? It seems like a pretty simple problem to solve.
Because we get a lot of these issues around town where new houses are built in proximity to the old houses where we had the new standards and no standards.
Correct.
And those are things that residents shouldn't just have to take, and that's why I wanted this to really be analyzed.
Right. And that's what Don had so far.
Okay.
On Montessori North deal, we have the developer putting in that last final road that was never finished when the development went under, and we worked with him and got him to agree to add stormwater taps to every lot on that last road, which makes a huge improvement. And that's what we have a lot of issues with in Montessori North is people have sump pump water that's supposed to go 200 feet down a swale in the rear yard and sump pumps that run every 30 seconds. So it's a nightmare. Every person, there's probably 30 people in Montessori North that have issues with drainage with sump pump water.
Wow. Okay.
So we are trying to get stuff taken care of ahead of the, just like that. They got 25 new lots down that road, which every one of them has a tap to put the sump pumps into a pipe. So
what about the King subdivision issue?
King subdivision, Don is looking into that also. I haven't been involved in that at all as of recent, but he was checking into it.
Because I know Mrs. Ellis is going to reach out to me soon to try to get a status update. So if you could provide me some kind of report that I can share with her, that would be helpful. Any other stormwater related items for now? I seem to get all the calls now that Greg's not on the council.
There's one more. One of the things we're looking at before we do the community crossing grant is making sure any drainage that would need to go under the road is installed. So we're not tearing up a brand new roadway. So those, exactly. So that's part of that. That's part of Don's review there.
Okay. Thank you for the voluminous report on all of those things. And again, a couple of loose end items, if you could get me some sort of report that I can share with residents to show some sort of path of resolution. Town attorney?
I have drafted and subsequently given you a first draft of the form of ordinance that are established a fee or charge for services rendered by the town's fire department. Just fine tuning to doing it, but I wanted to give you the first draft. Jill and I had Todd do it. Go through some of the fine tuning. But we're in very close proximity to getting this to the final form. I wanted you to have this oath, and I want your comments. Give me your comments. It can also be an accompanying appeal ordinance for an existing 1996. Then volunteer fire department. And with some let's be anyway, the upgraded process.
I'd ask the council to review this ordinance and offer any comments, questions, or guidance to the town attorney. So at the next council meeting, we can consider this ordinance on a first reading. One other item, Mr. Austin, that you and I have been talking about and working on is Chef Joshua Palmer was here at our last meeting. And since then, there have been numerous conversations, including a conference call today with Mr. Gierzik, myself, and Michelle Baker. And I just hope I have that kind of energy when I'm Jimmy's age. That guy is full of energy and full of life. But Candy, who was in here earlier, was approached by Joshua Palmer to possibly locate his food truck there. We saw under our ordinance 680, which actually would allow for something like that to take place. This spurred a larger conversation between myself and Plan Commission Chairman Jerry Wilkening at looking at where is there a place for something like a food truck in Cedar Lake? What regulations would need to be established, not only to protect public safety, but also to honor and protect our brick and mortar buildings. We don't necessarily want a full community of little fair type food carts all around the town. So it's looking at some other ordinances that Jill dug up from communities all over the state, looking at something from Porter County, and then doing some homework of our own. Mr. Wilkening and I have shared some information with Dave on amending this ordinance 680 to include a provision for food trucks that would create kind of the regulatory base for it. That would include a fee structure that would be somewhat equivalent to that of a similar type restaurant. So that's the first thing. So I did a little research, looked at taxes from 2019 from places like Tasty Top and where Vito's Italian Ice is, and it's in the $2,000 a year range in property taxes, what they pay for a small commercial lot like that. So I thought about that and how would we apply something like that to a food truck? And I thought you do something where, and Wilkening and I discussed this, Jerry, and I said, well, maybe we only allow them 4 days a week and leave the 7 days a week for those people who have invested in the brick and mortar. And you look at kind of a prorated charge of about $10 a day. So if they do it 4 days a week and 52 weeks a year, that's $2,000 in fees that you would generate from something like that. So it would come out to something equivalent in taxes to a similar style restaurant. And then we started talking about the zoning and site plan part of it, which would be the jurisdiction of the Plan Commission, and looking at making sure it's in at least a B2 zoning district, that it has certain site improvements for ingress and egress and pedestrian conveyance. That way somebody just can't set one up in their driveway, making sure that we're, again, protecting the interests of the public and those who have invested in our community. But in the meantime, Chef Palmer with his food truck is still really pushing hard, and Candy at the town club had some concerns about it and has decided not to move forward with that. And that was her call. That's her property. The town does still own some property across from Holy Name School, which used to be a restaurant, and it does have an old site plan, but nonetheless a site plan that's still there. That could be a possible avenue for Mr. Palmer to get started. In our conversation with Mr. Gierzik today, who owns the property on Moore Street, who's Chef Palmer's father, he wants him to locate there, of course, and we kind of had a back and forth about at least the minimum site improvements that would need to be seen there to facilitate that. And in the meantime, trying to find a way to bridge that gap under Ordinance 680, which would allow him to have a food truck in the town. He would just need to have a place to do it under that special events part of that ordinance from 1996. So this has been kind of a complex conversation, but you're starting to see more and more of these with the change in our economy to kind of an a la carte type economy where everything is to go. You're going to see more and more of this type of entrepreneurial activity because as you see, a lot of brick and mortar stores and restaurants are closing across the country. There's not as much of a need with delivery services and to-go services for huge sit-down restaurants. Now, that doesn't mitigate the need that we have in this community to protect those people who have invested in this community. So that's why this has been such a tedious process to this point, and definitely not an easy one to consider. Although under our own laws, Mr. Palmer could open that food truck under an ordinance from 24 years ago. So we're trying to find the right resolution here.
Zoning district classification, ordinance 680, which is a mandatory ordinance for our zoning ordinance, and still is. Still in effect as it is repealed. So what we're talking about is layering what's been permitted already by definition or by zoning district classifications. The particular use in the zoning district and the parameters under which that use will occur. So that would be anything I would render carefully, but I would render it such that process would put itself forward. Then the building department would have permitted, they would have parameters, they would have enforcement and oversight objective criteria by which they could administer the zoning ordinance with that use accordingly.
And what we're trying to do from a legislative standpoint is to create the platform that would allow for this to occur with very specific direction, so that it is not a scourge, or it doesn't create a situation where nobody wants to invest in a brick and mortar building anymore, because those are important in our community for our net AV, for our aesthetic, for our lifestyle, for all of those things that we've been building on. So it's very specific. It's kind of a narrow piece of legislation, but it would give anyone who can meet those requirements an opportunity to do it the right way. So we're not creating public safety issues, aesthetic issues, unfairness to our restaurants as it relates to the fees charged. Because it would be pretty unfair for a food truck to come in and sell $2,000 or $3,000 worth of food a day and not pay any taxes, when you have people that do that contribute a significant amount to the till. So those are the difficulties. But in the meantime, Dave and I talked about the town-owned parcel that used to be JoJo's Restaurant as a possible temporary startup point for that food truck. It's something I wouldn't be not in favor of, because it still is a part of our ordinance 680. It is the law of the land, but the council would have to check off on that. That land has not been closed on by the potential buyer yet. Is that correct, Dave? Okay. So that would be something, and Mr. Gierzik has dedicated himself to working with our building department, with Michelle and with Jill, both, to submit a site plan, submit a survey, and come up with something that would work for his site that could be approved. And we had an hour-long conversation today about that. So this potential temporary site for Josh's entrepreneurial business would be just that. completely temporary as Jimmy works through that process with our building department and our Board of Zoning Appeals if need be. We don't know yet if he would need a variance. It just depends on what kind of site plan that he submits would tell us whether or not there's a variance needed. So I don't know what the council's feeling is about this. I know it's kind of a difficult item. The quality, we saw the menu that he circulated to us last time. The quality of the product, the credentials of him as a chef, it's a pretty unique opportunity. I think that it could have a pretty popular draw. And again, the legislation, once we get that finished and adopted, will help us answer the questions to our current business owners. But how do we help an entrepreneur get started under our current laws that are on the books, which do allow for something like this to happen? So that's kind of the question I throw out there, because Joshua is just chomping at the bit to get going right now. And I've been trying to temper him a little bit, and we've had some good conversations. He was really hoping to get something here on the east side of the lake in that high pedestrian area. And I can understand the town club with the current situation not being real comfortable with it. And but would the town council be comfortable with allowing him to utilize our property that we own as a temporary startup point while his father works through the planning process with our building department? So that's the
I
question.
would be, absolutely, as long as Dave is comfortable with it. And
It sounds
If-
delicious.
if-
I was so hungry after
if-
reading it.
If you saw the,
And he plans to change it pretty regularly, so.
so he's sourced pork from local farms, beef from local farms. He actually goes out and forages once a week for food in the forest. He's a pretty skilled chef. Worked at Suave as an executive chef in Chicago for years, trained under, I'm trying to remember, Potter, was that his name? He's a Michelin star chef that he trained under. I mean, he comes with a pretty good set of credentials. And, but it's the council's call whether or not we allow our property there to be used for that purpose.
I mean, I feel like the $10 fee a day, you said it adds up to about $2,000.
If a person operated four days a week over 52 weeks, it's a little over $2,000, which is about the same as what Tasty Top pays. I would like to have a 4-day-a-week parameter on something like a food truck, because I'd like to reserve a 7-day-a-week for people that invest in the brick and mortar in the site. I think that's fair to them. And also it's fair that they're paying a similar fee to a small to-go restaurant like Tasty Top.
I think it's great use of the property that's sitting vacant for how long?
And it could be great use. And Jimmy talked today about his overall goal being to build either 1 unit or 2 unit building down there that would include a restaurant for his son.
Sure.
It's a start.
They're doing a startup here to
Get his
try and
name out
gather
there.
momentum and interest,
Sure.
but it's something we haven't had in front of us before, which is why I've spent some time on this, because it needed. Now, we had Frank's Barbecue that came a few years ago with that roadside stand, and I wish I would have known back then about Ordinance 680, because we might have been able to find a better path for them to get where they wanted to be. And back then, I didn't realize that was even something we could consider. And I wish we'd have known that back then, but we do know what we know now, that this has been in force since 1996. So it's the council's pleasure here. You could decide to let him give it a shot on our property and make that motion, or not. You know, he would have to come in and fill out the paperwork, special events. Yeah, he'd have to specify what it is and the days of operation and those sorts of things. But we could give him permission to use our property or not. And it's got, ample space there to do something like that. So that's up to the council. Would there be someone that would like to consider that tonight in the form of making a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
point, it's empty. They just to get some eyeball. He's old, not a filters market for it, but parcel like that. $2,000 a month. $1,000 a month.
Well, I don't know if you can,
You have to figure out a rational basis for it.
that's why the basis I used was comparing it to other to-go restaurants. So like when Frank's Barbecue was here on 133rd, it was to go. Tasty Top is to go. They pay taxes, and it's about $2,000 a year.
The owner of the property, brick and mortar pays the tax.
Yes. So I looked up what the tax is like on Tasty Top, and it's about $2,000 a year.
We need to have that objective. All I'm saying is that we need to have that objective information in our file available for when the application is made, so there's a rational and reasonable basis.
That's why I thought like $10 a day based upon a comparative restaurant.
What about the use of the document?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's something else. Yeah, I mean, the fee for, the fee for the actual food truck in my mind would be similar to what Tasty Top pays in taxes. But I see what you're saying in actual rental of the property. So what would we charge for rental of the monastery clubhouse?
$75
For
per day.
per day? Okay. So that's something to think about there.
But it's a building. This is just a lot.
This is just a vacant lot.
It's just a vacant lot.
What would we charge somebody? I know we normally waive.
Liability and-
What does a vendor pay to?
I don't know what Kelly charges the vendors. We're 150, we were 150 plus an additional 5 over a certain amount.
So I mean, those are things those are things we currently don't have in that regulation for special events is any fee attached to it. There's no fee right now. We're considering in the legislation a fee structure that would be comparable to similar style restaurants. And if they were to want to locate on a vacant lot, that lot would have to be improved to meet a certain minimum standard that a business would have to meet.
Mr. President?
Yeah.
The thing that I would caution you on is you say he's gonna operate for 52 weeks a year. But that's not possible in that truck. You know, it would probably close during the really bad winter times. Will we lose that?
I understand where you're coming from. But it's difficult to, in coming up with legislation to narrow it that much. Like one of the things I learned when I started here was to legislate the rule and not the exception. Dave taught me that. And so I always try to look at this as a big picture. If somebody wanted to operate 52 weeks, how would we make that something that on a prorated basis is fair to other businesses? And that's where I came up with, as just a proposal, as $10 a day would put you in that, on a 4-day a week, would put you in that $2,000 a year range.
Yeah, but if I only come in and only do the prime time during the summer, I'm only gonna pay $700.
Okay, but then you also make a lot less revenue too for the
Right.
year.
You're not working the rest of the year, so you're not bringing.
So you don't have that opportunity to bring in that
You're not
profit
competitive
revenue.
with
No,
the
but
rest of
I'm here during the high time. It should be if we would do it, maybe a $2,000 fee for the year, and you can open 4 days a week.
And that's what I was saying, is to be
I think that's what
a
Randy
license
said.
for the year
Yeah.
that would give you 4 days a week of operation
Right.
available.
Yeah, but a flat fee
Yeah.
to be comparable to the tax.
Yeah, and that's something that I've talked to Dave about, was making a $2,000 a year license
Yeah.
for someone that wants to be licensed. And essentially, if you did it 4 days a week, your first plate of food that you served every day would be for the fee. It'd basically be it.
Yeah.
Which is pretty reasonable for an entrepreneur to consider something like that. But I see what you're saying, Ralph.
And to cover, to cover the tax.
Mhm.
you know.
That makes sense.
If you prorated out a $10 a day over a full year, which a restaurant has to operate, that's $3,650. So I thought that was a pretty fair Actually, they're paying more in a fee than what a place like Tasty Top is if you prorate it. So, I mean, that's just ideas, but for now, if we want to consider how to help him get started, while Jimmy works through that process, that's something we've got in front of us right now as an opportunity.
Where would that money go into the general fund? Or?
Absolutely. Any money like that would go in the general fund.
What about providing a certificate of insurance similar to we do when we have special events here?
I think with it being on town property, we'd have
Being on
to,
town
we would
property.
have to
I
be
just want to make
listed.
sure we have that conversation as we're thinking of
So
these
Dave, what
things.
Jill mentioned was the provision of a certificate of insurance listing the town as added insured if he's on our property. So that, yeah, that would have to be done as well.
Just want to make sure that it's one of the things we discuss.
So what's the council's pleasure on this?
I think Colleen made a motion.
Yeah, I made a motion to
Would-
move forward with the provisions.
And that would include what kind of a fee structure to basically rent the town property?
You have to do the food cart thing like per day and then the rental of the property per day is something clear, right?
Yeah.
Well, the food cart number would come with the new legislation. So the current number that we could consider would be the actual use of the town property.
Yeah, that should be like $25 to be fair, like
Yeah, I wouldn't think it would be a lot more than that.
$75. You rent that pavilion out there for the day, it's $25.
So let's say a
That's a good
$25 rental. What about hours of operation? What's the scope there?
He was talking lunch through evening dinner, I assume.
There's no lighting.
There's no lighting, so
There's no lighting.
we might want to go to 9 o'clock and I know he's got some lighting on his truck, some spotlights and stuff, but I don't know if it's sufficient to safely move people in and out of there. So, yeah. So maybe you go till 8 o'clock or something that way.
11 to 8 or something like that.
That would be fair. That's a 9-hour window, but it would get him cleared out if there's a crowd there before, people are off to bed and things like that. So that would probably be a pretty good provision. What else do we need to throw into that motion?
You need basic information, you need contact information.
Insurance certificate. Do you concur with those things in your motion?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would think also we need to talk to a realtor to come up with a fee. Because what would that piece of property rent for per month?
I don't know if you can compare it, Ralph,
Yeah.
because then you're going to be looking at something that might be $1,000 or $2,000 a month. So it's a mobile business. It's not a stationary. Yeah. It's a spot.
Okay, so we're gonna rent this piece of property for $25 a day.
A spot.
A spot, yeah, that's what you have to think about.
Okay, now he comes up here and he starts his thing. Hey, this is a pretty good deal. I want to bring my food truck there. I'm going to come down and talk to the town. Can I book my food truck?
And if we identify another spot on a town-owned property, we could charge another rent for that spot.
So he is going to have exclusive use of this property.
No, there's no exclusivity. There's nobody else competing with him, Ralph.
Right.
Do you have a food truck?
Not yet.
Okay.
Maybe a food boat.
Well, and he's planning this, at least tentatively planning it on a temporary basis to get started.
This is very unique. So I drove by on Route 30 the other day, B&E Honda. It's out there by the university. There are 3 fair-style food carts set up at B&E Honda right now. Under Porter County's ordinance, which only charges $300 for a year for a license.
It's been a popular thing for a few years now.
So we're talking about something that's even more unique and restrictive and specific than what Porter County does. They've got the sirloin tips truck set up out there and a couple of others, just serving food because there's no fairs, no festivals.
Yeah, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
right?
And they use the Porter County ordinance to do it. And they're doing it. So,
Selling donuts right at Full Sun Road, right?
Yep.
yeah, he's in unincorporated Lake County, and what we want to avoid is having people doing it out of their driveways like that. We want it to be a little more organized and fair to other taxpayers.
Everybody else.
I think when you make the rule for the, you know, we're talking about $10 a day, you need to come up with a yearly $500, $300 a year, whatever, or like $25 a day.
Well, that's what Ralph was saying, was just do it. If you're going to do a food truck, you buy a $2,000 per year license.
Right.
And then that takes care of that fee, and you can operate all 52 weeks. You can operate 20 weeks, whatever you want for that fee.
And the location would be a different fee.
But you need to have like a higher.
If it's town property, but if it's private property, then that would be, like right now, Jimmy, on those lots that he has, pays, I looked it up, about $700 a year in taxes because they're vacant. So I mean, and he pays stormwater fees on the lots. So right now he is a taxpayer, and so he deserves that consideration as a taxpayer, owner of commercial lots. But we just got to do this right. And getting him started is the hard part.
Well, I think that when you make the rule, you have to make so much a day or so much a year, because this is gonna spark other interests.
Yep,
People
yep.
wanna just-
That's what it's gonna be.
Yeah,
You're
well,
right.
I
It needs to be
think
like a daily rate of $25 or a
Well,
recently priced
we're
1
saying
year.
2,000 a year,
Or
right?
$2,000 a year, or $20 a day, or something like, I mean, there's a lot of sausage to be made here still.
The only other question, Mr. President, is that we would have to lay something out on that property saying, what if others come here? Because I know that my department's gonna be the first one called when there's a traffic problem there, because we got carts. This one opened up, and then now this one's opened up. We can't park anywhere. I got cars on Osborne. I got cars on.
Well, the maximum under ordinance 680 is 4 days. Okay, that's the maximum they can operate. And then he's got to come back in and get another permit. So anybody that would want to come there would have to go through the same process.
Just like the clubhouse, it's got to be a 4-day window.
Yeah.
Every week,
One at a time.
every week.
She says I'm beating a dead horse here. We're trying to figure this out.
25.
We're trying to figure something out.
$2,000 a year is what we make them.
This is a public meeting. And if it'll be less of a traffic issue through that corridor, just,
As well as all the people that live on Osborne are gonna complain about
well, people are going to complain wherever something is.
it. Every meeting.
I just think we're not prepared tonight because we don't agree on a fee right now.
Colleen made a motion, and it included a bunch of these contingencies
Contingencies intended.
of the fee as well, of $25 a day
I
as the
would just
fee.
like to see it move forward for him.
But is it gonna be a flat rate of 2,000 plus? the
That's
25 a day?
the future legislation.
Yeah, we don't have to.
That's future. We aren't there yet.
Okay, let's just.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
Get this horse going.
This is dealing with the,
Can we do that?
yeah. So there's a motion on the table. Is there a second? Yep. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Julie seconded it. Any questions or discussion on the motion? A roll call vote, please, on the motion.
Robert Carnahan,
No.
Ralph Miller,
No.
Colleen Scheeben,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Niemeyer.
Yes. Motion carries 4-2. So I'll inform Joshua that he needs to reach out to town staff after a couple of days, that you guys can converse on this and kind of come up with those parameters and see if he's even interested in that site. If he's not, then fine. No harm done. Thank you for indulging me to ride that dead horse for 20 some odd minutes.
25.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, what is a permit gonna cost?
Ralph, this is temporary, okay? It's gonna be a $25 a day fee. The permit's not developed yet. That's still we're making the legislation from nothing. We're
$25 a day fee for,
for rent of the town spot.
okay, now what about his truck?
That's the rent on the motion.
4 out of
Yeah,
7.
680 says that he can operate 4 days.
Okay. Oh, okay, without a permit.
We don't have a license process right now.
That's what I'm saying,
Right.
okay.
We're working on inventing that licensing process and the legislation that supports it. That's what I was talking about with coming up with that larger fee structure, the types of sites that it could be operated on, the site
So he can
improvements that are
open
needed.
up right now for free.
No. It would be $25 a day to rent the town spot on our property.
And $2,000.
No different than if they rented the shelter out there for a picnic.
Okay, now, I own a piece of property in town. I own a vacant lot. My brother has a food truck. My brother can come there and come on my vacant lot
Nope.
for $25 a
No,
day
sir.
and
Business zone
and do his
business?
food truck.
Is
Does it have the
business?
site improvements that it would need to have a business?
Yes,
Really?
Yeah.
Where?
where Liberty Restaurant used to be.
Well, that's all owned by the town.
No, but what I'm saying is if I own that property, I can come in.
So if it's zoned properly for business and it has a site that has been used for something similar. So for example, Dave gave this example at the last meeting. If Bungie wanted to have a special event at the Sportsman's Den where Frank's tried to set up, and they came in, since there's already a site plan there, it's already a business spot, they could do that under our current ordinance legally. And the town can charge nothing for it because we have no fee structure. So the legislation I'm working on, Ralph, is to set up something that sets up a fee structure, that sets up regulations. But right now we have an ordinance that is in force, that is the law of the land, that's 24 years old, that allows this to go on without a fee.
Okay.
But it has to be on a business property. And it has to be a special event. So that's as good of answer as I can give you, Ralph.
Okay.
But what was made in that motion was a $25 a day rental to the town. That's not the end game legislation that we're talking about. That is temporary. That's working under the current set of guidelines. Okay? All right, next item, clerk treasurer report.
Continuing to work with our financial consultants, and Jill and I have briefly discussed, we're going to be coordinating some council affairs meetings to get started on the 2021 budget.
Okay? Town administrator,
I just wanted to report back. I have made contact with NIPSCO on the request for the light pole at 136th and Cedar. This one kind of fell a little bit through the cracks as NIPSCO wasn't doing any external work during COVID that was of smaller scale unless absolutely necessary. So I have made that contact today and anticipate hearing back from them in the next few days.
okay? Police department,
You received the calls for service from May of 2020 to date, 102 EMS calls. We had 108 citizen assists, 13 juvenile calls. We had 130 ordinance calls, 70 incidents related to persons, 36 related to property, 191 traffic related incidents. 11 of them were not classified. I know that you had some communication about some of the ordinance issues. If you'll notice on the second page where it talks about citations and warnings, about 60% of the time our citizens are given a warning before they're given a citation because the purpose is to get them to clean it up, not to cause them to have to pay a fee.
what I was talking about was that there's been instances in the recent past where one person got a warning that had.
I would like to have a one-on-one with you and find out where that took place, because I will absolutely take care of that. I don't know what.
It's happened on numerous occasions where a private property owner gets a warning and someone who owns like a development land that's bought by a developer has got 4-foot tall weeds on it. It's happened all over town.
I will talk to you one-on-one with it. Because I personally wrote citations to those myself. So those property owners. So we had 54 state citations issued, 4 town ordinances and 16 ordinance citations, 66 state warnings issued, 4 traffic warnings and 39 town ordinance warnings issued. We had 24 total arrests last month.
with a total of 31 charges filed, 17 misdemeanors, 5 felonies, 1 infraction. The only other issue we had was obviously the demonstrations that were taking place around the county. We have 4 members of 2 on the District 1 team and 2 on the SWAT team that were heavily involved in that to assist those communities that were struggling with the demonstrations. So they put in quite a bit of hours there. But it worked out pretty good. So,
You know, I wanted to say something with everything going on. There's this big movement to really take this out on our police. And when you give a list like that, contacts that are made. So statistically in this country every year, there's 375 million contacts made by police with citizens throughout the country.
Sure.
Of that, there's 1,000 deaths per year from police-involved shootings of 375 million contacts. Now, some of those deaths, like what we saw with the George Floyd case, are reprehensible, and those police officers should be dealt with. But most of the cases, and if you even look at the statistics in the Washington Post, out of those 1,000, only 4% of the 1,000 people killed by a police officer were unarmed. 54% were armed with guns.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm saying is that the statistics support good contact by your cops, and I'm praying that this rhetoric out here against police quiets down, because you're starting to see mass resignations across this country. And I tell you right now, I can't understand why anybody would want to join the police service at this point. Why the hell would a young man come out of high school and say, I'm going to go to college to be a cop? Why would you do that? I mean, I'm thankful that I've run into a number of your officers and they still have a great attitude. Their morale is good. They're, like you just showed, they're out in the community doing their job. You don't have any bad reports of behavior. So keep doing what you're doing with that.
And if we do, we take care of it right away.
There will be no, as long as I sit on this, I will fight tooth and nail against anybody that says defund the police. If anything, we should be working harder to fund more training and more opportunities for police officers to become better at what they do. So this is just absolutely insane what's happening. And I appreciate the report that you gave, and it shows how much contact our people make without incident.
The
So
only
keep
other
up the good work.
President, I have for the 12841 Wicker that you guys chose. Do we have the contact information on that gentleman? Because I'm sure that I will be being called about the 20 cars that are sitting there now. So
Jill might have that contact.
I'll get it
info.
from you.
I just got one thing to add.
Go ahead, Tim. Grab the mic.
Just on your comment on the weeds, I mean, every building permit that's been picked up for Lindsway, Crystal Oaks, those subdivisions that you talk about, people, all these contractors are paying anywhere from $300 to $900 in weed ordinance violations when they pick up them permits. So they are getting fined, and they are being filed against for weeds, but they just aren't in the same context as the homeowners. But they are, I mean, every time somebody builds on those lots, we're getting paid for those weed ordinance violations over the past few years. So
I think all anybody wants
they
is
are catching up.
for citizens to feel like they're being treated
Right, and
fairly.
they are. I mean, I know it's different, but yeah. And they're being paid slowly but surely.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate that. Anything else, Chief Fisher?
No, thank you.
All right, thanks. Chief Wilkening? Dave?
One last item, what necessity of executive, like your authority, chief, executive, industrial park, industrial drive, finally,
Is there a motion by the council for the added agenda item of the purchase of Industrial Drive? Dave, do you have a number to make that offer on?
95.
That's what I thought. It was in the upper 90s.
I don't have the exact.
Okay. So would the council offer through a motion authorization for the attorney to make the offer to the McAllister family for the purchase of Industrial Drive?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Sharp. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Sheehan. Or questions or discussion?
Yes, what was the price?
It was somewhere between 95,000 and 100,000. Dave didn't have the exact number on the median of the two appraisals. Any other questions or discussion? Roll call.
Robert Carnahan,
Yes.
Ralph Miller.
Yes.
Colleen Scheven,
Yes.
Richard Sharp,
Yes.
Julie Rivera,
Yes.
Randy Neemeyer.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Thanks for bringing that up, Dave. All right, we go to public comment. Is there any public comment?
I have one. Email from Kathy Broomhead. Will the town consider a laundry building in Cedar Lake in the future?
A laundry building like a laundromat? I mean, there was one here before.
I think it closed.
Yeah, it
Did
closed.
Colleen?
Mhm. Yeah, so people are kind of lost.
I suppose if somebody came with that business idea,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a perfectly legit use, Kathy. I understand. Do you have any friends that could open one? Well, I'm not saying you, maybe some friends.
I believe a local businessman did buy it and is interested in restoring.
That would be a great service to have.
Yeah, it's in bad shape, I think.
I know when I'm out on the road in a truck, I use laundromats and I love them. I'm glad they're there. Yeah. Absolutely. I practice good hygiene, Todd. Shower every day and everything. From myself. Yeah. Any other public comments? Our next town council public meeting will be July 7th. Hopefully everybody has a safe and healthy 4th. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully all in person on the 7th. This meeting's adjourned.